You walk into the bathroom, flip the switch, and there it is. The shower door. It looks like it rained dirty water inside your house and dried into a permanent gray fog. You pull out a $12 plastic spray bottle from under the sink, the one with the bright neon label promising miracle results, and you spray it down. The air fills with a sharp artificial chemical sting that catches in your throat. You take a rough sponge and you scrub until your forearm aches and your shoulder feels stiff. You rinse it, and when the water runs off, the fog is still there. The same cloudy white crust, completely unchanged. You look at it and think the glass itself is ruined. You think about the cost of a contractor, the $300 for a new glass panel, the tools, the weekend lost to fixing a mistake. Stop and think about that. Why do we automatically assume that the answer to a stubborn problem must be expensive, complicated, or brand new? We have been trained to throw money at a cloud, hoping it clears. But the old ways whisper a different truth, a plain, forgotten truth that costs less than a pocket handful of loose change. I am Elias Yoder. Now, let us be completely straight with one another from the beginning. We keep things plainer than most in my community. And I do not have a glass shower door in my own home. My wash house is simple, but glass is glass, and hard water is hard water, no matter where it sits. I have spent my whole life cleaning cloudy glass, the small, delicate chimneys of kerosene lamps blacked with soot, the heavy glass canning jars gone white and opaque from the mineral in the boiling pot. The heavy gray fog on your modern shower door is the exact same trouble, and the very same old answers apply to it. Understand this. Your glass is not ruined. It is merely buried under two distinct layers of time and neglect. Before we go a step further, let us establish an honest limit. I am a practitioner, not a salesman, and I will not promise you magic. If your glass has been neglected for 20 years to the point where the minerals have physically etched into the silica, or if someone took a coarse wire brush to it and scarred the surface, this method will not magically heal the physical wounds of the glass. It cannot regrow what is gone, but if the glass is simply coated, if it is hidden beneath the crust of daily living, these two plain items will bring it back to the day it left the factory. To understand how to defeat this fog, you must first realize that you are not fighting one enemy. You are fighting two. Most people fail because they treat the cloudy door as a single stubborn mess. They spray one chemical and expect it to do everything. It cannot. The first layer is soap scum. The second layer is the hard water mineral. They are entirely different in their nature, and what dissolves the first will completely ignore the second. If you mix up the order, you will spend your whole Saturday scrubbing until your hands are raw, and you will achieve nothing but frustration. Let us look closely at the first layer, the soap scum. When you run your fingers across the dry glass, it feels slightly slick, waxy, or greasy. That is not stone. That is the accumulated residue of the soaps itself, the animal fats, the plant oils, and the tallow blended with the natural oils of the skin. Every time you take a warm shower, this greasy mist rises, settles on the glass, and gets baked hard by the steam day after day. It is an organic fatty shield. Water bounces right off it. To break this shield, you do not need an engineered chemical from a laboratory. You need a gentle, living sour that has been sitting in kitchen cellars for centuries. Plain white vinegar. Why does a simple jug of vinegar succeed where expensive formulas fail? Stop and think about the nature of the grease. Soap scum isn't just fat. It has lime bound up inside its structure, holding it together like mortar in a brick wall. Vinegar is a mild, natural acid, acetic acid, to use the modern term for what our grandfathers simply called the sour of the fermentation. University researchers and chemists will tell you the exact same thing. This mild acid quietly breaks the chemical bonds of the lime, causing the waxy fat to lose its grip on the smooth surface of the silica. It is strong enough to dissolve the bond, yet gentle enough that it will never pit the glass or burn your skin. It costs about $1 a gallon, and it works because it obeys the natural laws of chemistry, not because of a marketing promise. But there is a secret to using it that most people miss, and this is why they give up. They spray it on, and they immediately wipe it off, treating it like a modern quick cleaner. Vinegar does not work instantly. It is a slow, patient worker. It needs time to sit. It needs to soak into the waxy pores of the scum, to eat through the fat and loosen the grip. If you do not give it those few quiet minutes to work, you are relying entirely on the strength of your own elbow, and that is a losing battle. Once that waxy fat is softened and rinsed away, however, you will often find that the glass is still not perfectly clear. The heavy grease is gone, but beneath it lies the second enemy. Those stubborn, rough white spots that look like dried raindrops. This is the mineral. This is hard water stain. Let us understand what this actually is, because it changes how you look at the problem. The water coming out of your well or your city pipes carries invisible, dissolved minerals. Calcium, magnesium, lime, picked up from the deep earth. When the shower ends, the water drops cling to the glass. The air dries them. The pure water turns to vapor and rises into the air, but the stone cannot turn to air. The stone stays behind, bonded directly to the glass. Every single shower adds another microscopic layer of rock. You are quite literally looking at a thin sheet of limestone growing on your door. You cannot wash stone away with soap. You cannot dissolve thick stone quickly with a mild kitchen sour. You need a tool that can physically shear the stone away without harming the delicate glass beneath it. My grandfather taught me this principle at the pump log when I was just a boy. He showed me how the water left a white crust on the iron rim over the summer months, and he told me, "Elias, never try to argue with rock using a cloth. You must meet hardness with the correct measure of hardness." And that brings us to the most misunderstood tool in the practical caretaker's toolkit. It is something that looks like it will ruin your home, but instead delivers perfection. It is steel wool. Now, do not startle. If you take the common steel wool from the workshop, the coarse gray stuff used to clean rust off an old shovel, you will score your glass with deep, permanent scratches that will break your heart. But steel wool is graded by numbers, and there is one specific grade, refined until the metal threads are as thin and soft as sheep's wool, yet retaining the clean cutting edge of iron. It is the grade marked with 4 zeros. 4-aught. Understand this clearly. The 4-0 grade is the only key to this lock. It lives in a very narrow, beautiful margin of nature. It is harder than the mineral crust of calcium, so it shears the rock right off the surface. But it is softer than the tempered glass underneath, meaning the glass remains completely untouched, smooth, and flawless. Now, I am going to show you exactly how to take these two simple tools, this dollar jug of sour and this handful of fine iron thread, and apply them to that clouded door, step by step, so you can watch that stubborn gray fog vanish before your very eyes, leaving nothing but absolute clarity. Now let us walk through this together, step by step, with a quiet mind and no rush. To do this right, we must prepare our workspace and our minds for a slow, steady rhythm. Do not rush into the bathroom with your tools flying. First, look at what we have gathered on the floor. A clean, empty spray bottle, your jug of plain white vinegar, a package of that ultra-fine 4-0 steel wool, a soft sponge without any abrasive green scrubbing pads on it, and a pair of simple rubber gloves. Let us start with the preparation of the first pass, the vinegar. Open that jug. The scent will hit you immediately. Sharp, clean, and sour. The familiar smell of a kitchen during harvest canning season. There is no need to dilute it. I know some folks advise mixing it half and half with water to save a penny, or adding dish soap to make it stick. Stop and think about that. If you dilute the sourness, you are simply weakening the very tool you chose for its strength. We want it pure, full strength, just as it came out of the oak cask or the barrel. Pour that clear, water-like liquid straight into your spray bottle until it is nearly full. Screw the nozzle on tight and set it down. Before you touch the glass, pull on those rubber gloves. This is the first small place where beginners stumble. They think because vinegar is safe to eat in a salad, It requires no protection. But remember, you are about to work with fine iron fibers later on, and full-strength vinegar can dry your cuticles and sting any small nicks on your knuckles. The gloves are not for fear, they are for respect. Now, look at your shower door. It must be completely dry before we begin. If someone just took a shower 10 minutes ago, go find something else to do for an hour. Leave the door open, let the air move, and let the glass dry down to room temperature. If you spray cold vinegar onto hot glass that is already soaked with tap water, two bad things happen. The vinegar gets instantly diluted by the water clinging to the surface, and the heat causes the vinegar to evaporate into the air before it can sink its teeth into the grease. The glass must be cool, dry, and still. We begin the first pass. Take your spray bottle, hold it about 6 inches from the surface, and begin at the very top corner. Squeeze the trigger in long, steady strokes. Watch how the liquid hits the gray film. At first, it will try to bead up and run off, sliding down the waxy coating like rain on a greasy coat. Keep spraying until the entire surface is weeping with vinegar, a solid, glistening sheet of wetness from top to bottom. Do not be stingy. $1 a jug means you can afford to let it soak deep. Once the door is thoroughly wet, put the bottle down, step out of the room, and look at your watch. We need 3 full minutes. This is where most folks fail the test of patience. They see the liquid running down the glass, they get anxious, and they start scrubbing immediately. Understand this. The vinegar is doing the labor right now, so your shoulder doesn't have to later. Listen closely, and if the room is quiet enough, you might hear a very faint, microscopic fizzing. That is the gentle acid softly eating into the lime, holding the soap fats together. The sharp, clean scent of the vinegar will fill the small room. Let it work. When those 3 minutes have passed, take your soft sponge. Do not use the rough, scratchy state of a kitchen sponge. We want only the soft, absorbent foam. Dip it into a small bucket of clear, lukewarm water just to get it damp. Now, here is that backward tip I mentioned earlier. Start at the bottom of the door and work your way up. Watch how your sponge moves. By starting at the bottom, you are wiping away the softened scum while it is still fully saturated with the vinegar. If you start at the top, the water from your sponge will run down and rinse the vinegar off the bottom section before your hands ever get there. Leaving the lower half dry and stubborn, move your hand in slow circular motions, about the width of a dinner plate. You will feel a distinct change under your palm. At first, the sponge will feel like it is dragging through something sticky and thick. That is the waxy soap grease resisting. But after 2 or 3 passes, the resistance will suddenly vanish, and the sponge will glide smoothly, accompanied by a clean, distinct squeaking sound against the glass. That high, sharp sound is the voice of clean silica. Work your way steadily up to the top, rinsing your sponge in the clear water whenever it feels heavy with gray residue. Once you reach the top, take a cup of clean water and pour it down the glass to rinse away the loosened film. Dry the door completely with a clean towel. Step back and look through it toward the light. The heavy, greasy fog is gone, but you will now see what was hidden beneath it. Those hard, white, stubborn spots that look like permanent water droplets. They feel rough, like fine sandpaper under your bare fingertips. This is the limestone crust, the second enemy. Take out a single pad of your 4-0 steel wool. Give it a gentle pull with your gloved fingers to fluff it up slightly. It should feel incredibly soft, almost like a handful of dry cotton or raw silk, not prickly like the steel pads used for scouring pots. Ensure there is absolutely no soap built into the pad. We want pure dry metal. Here is the most critical beginner mistake, so listen carefully. Both the glass and the steel wool must be completely dry during this stage. If you introduce water now, the water will act as a lubricant, causing the fine steel wires to slide right over the tops of the mineral spots without cutting them. We need the dry, crisp friction of metal against stone. Hold the dry steel wool pad firmly in your palm. Choose a section of the glass with heavy spotting. Press the pad flat against it with moderate, steady pressure and begin rubbing in small, tight circles. Do not grind with all your weight. Just use the natural strength of your forearm. As you rub, look closely through the glass. You will see a fine, dry white dust begin to form and fall down the pane like a miniature snowstorm. That dry powder is the limestone being physically sheared off the glass, ground back into the dust it came from. Meave systematically, section by section. You will feel the steel wool catch slightly on each hard spot, and then, within 3 or 4 circles, the surface will become perfectly slick and silent. Run your gloved hand over the area you just worked. The roughness is gone, replaced by a surface as smooth as ice. Continue this over the entire door, paying special attention to the corners and around the metal handles where water likes to gather and sit. When you have finished the entire pane, you will see a light coating of white mineral dust and tiny, invisible steel fragments resting on the glass and the floor of the shower. Do not leave them there, or the metal dust will rust from the moisture in the air and leave tiny red stains. Take your spray bottle of vinegar one last time. Give the door a light misting to grab the dust and rinse it all down with a final, generous flush of clear water. Wipe it dry with a clean cloth. Look at it now. The gray fog is entirely lifted. The white stone spots have vanished into thin air, and the glass is so clear it looks like an open space where the door used to be. But the work is only half done. If we stop here, the very next shower will begin building the mountain all over again. We must protect this clarity, and that requires a simple shield. Now that the glass is clear, let us pull up a stools and sit down for a moment. Stop and think about what just happened in that room. It looks like a trick, or some kind of small miracle, but it is neither. It is merely the laws of nature working exactly as they were written. I am no scientist with a string of letters after my name, but my grandfather always said that a man who uses a tool without knowing why it cuts is just a passenger in his own life. You ought to know the reason behind the result, because when you understand the science in plain terms, you become the master of the chore. Let us look at that first pass with the vinegar. Modern chemists talk about pH scales and chemical balances, but we can look at it much simpler, like a pair of horses pulling in opposite directions. Soap scum is a chemical compound born from a marriage of opposites. On one side, you have the alkaline fats and oils from the soap bar. On the other, you have the minerals from your water. When they meet under the heat of the shower, they lock hands and form an insoluble salt. That means it is a structure that water cannot dissolve on its own. It is like dry clay, pour water on it, and it just sits there. But vinegar introduces a gentle acid, what we call acetic acid. Acid and alkali are natural enemies. When that sour liquid hits the waxy scum, it does not scrub. It unpicks the lock. The acid atoms rush into the structure of the scum, binding with the mineral bits and forcing the fats to let go. It is exactly like pouring warm water on a block of maple sugar. It does not break it by force. It coaxes the bonds apart until the structure simply melts away. That is why the sponge glides so easy after 3 minutes. The vinegar has turned a stubborn, sticky shield back into loose grease that can be wiped away with a soft cloth. Then we come to the second pass, the fine steel wool, and this is where the physics of the earth come into play. To understand why 4-0 steel wool clears away the white spots without leaving a single scratch on your door, you have to understand a concept called relative hardness. Long ago, a geologist named Friedrich Mohs created a scale to measure how hard things are, from 1 to 10. On this scale, talc powder is a 1, a diamond is a 10, and everything else sits somewhere in between. The rule of this scale is absolute and simple. A harder material will always scratch a softer material, but a softer material can never scratch a harder one. It is a boundary line drawn by nature. Now, where do our materials sit on this line? The limestone and calcium crust left behind by your hard water sits around a 3 on the scale. The tempered silica glass of your shower door is much tougher. It sits much higher, up around a 6 or 6.5. Now, look at our tool. The iron fibers in that specific 4-0 steel wool are processed until they are incredibly thin and mild. landing right around a 4 or 4.5 on that very same scale. Look at where that puts our little pad of steel. It is harder than the lime crust, which is a 3, so it shears the stone away like an iron plow through soft sod. But it is softer than the glass, which is a 6, so it glides right over the silica without making even a microscopic groove. It is trapped in that perfect, beautiful valley between the stone and the glass. It is hard enough to conquer the enemy, but too soft to injure the host. That is not luck. It is a precise mathematical law of the physical world. But I promised you an honest account, and this is where we must talk about the boundaries of this method. I am not here to tell you this is a cure-all for every clouded surface in your home. It has strict limits, and if you cross them, you will do harm, and I want no part in that. First, let us talk about the material itself. This method is strictly for genuine, tempered glass. It is not for plastics. Many modern shower enclosures, especially the cheaper ones, or the older stalls in small apartments, are not made of glass at all. They are made of acrylic, plexiglass, or polycarbonate. Plastic is an entirely different animal. On that scale of hardness we just spoke about, plastic sits down around a 3 or a 4, the exact same hardness as the steel wool, or even softer. If you take 4-0 steel wool to a plastic shower door, you will not clean it. You will tear it to pieces. You will create millions of tiny, microscopic scratches that will turn the plastic into a permanent milky white wall that can never be recovered. Before you touch a strand of steel to that door, tap it with your knuckle or a coin. Listen for the clear, high ring of true glass, not the dull, hollow thud of plastic. If it is plastic, put the steel wool away. Second, let us talk about the state of the glass itself. There is a condition called glass etching, or glass corrosion, that looks exactly like hard water fog, but is completely different. If hard water minerals are left to sit on glass in a hot, humid environment for many years, say 10 or 15 years without a single cleaning, a chemical reaction occurs. The highly alkaline minerals actually begin to leach the sodium out of the glass structure itself, physically changing the chemical makeup of the surface. It eats tiny pits and microscopic craters directly into the silica. When glass is etched, the cloud is no longer on the glass. The cloud is the glass. It is like wood that has rotted from water. You cannot scrape the rot away and leave the original board intact. If your door has reached this stage of deep historical corrosion, neither vinegar nor steel wool will bring the clarity back. The steel wool will slide over the smooth, pitted surface, and the glass will remain cloudy because the surface itself is physically deformed. This method can remove a mountain of crust sitting on top of the pane, but it cannot rebuild a surface that has been chemically dissolved by time. Lastly, you must be careful with the surroundings. While the fine steel wool is completely safe for the glass, it is not safe for the thin, decorative coatings often found on the metal frames holding the glass. If your door has a gold, brass, or painted matte black frame, those finishes are often just a thin layer of lacquer or anodized aluminum. They are soft. If your steel wool slips off the glass and rubs against those colored frames, it will buff the finish right off, leaving bright silver patches of raw metal behind. You must keep your hands steady or use a bit of painter's tape to protect the metal edges before you begin. So, understand the tool and respect its limits. It is a specific solution for true glass coated in true mineral crust. Now that we know why it works and where it applies, we must address the final piece of the puzzle: how to seal this glass so that we never have to perform this heavy labor ever again. There is a history here that stretches back further than any of us can rightly remember. Though it is written in the worn-down wood of our kitchen floors and the polished brass of the hand-me-down tools we keep in our drawers, people often ask me where such simple methods come from, as if they were invented in some secret laboratory. The truth is much older and much quieter. These methods are not inventions, they are survivals. They are the remnants of a time when every object in a home was a capital investment, a treasure to be guarded, not a commodity to be replaced. The use of vinegar as the primary solvent for household cleaning is as old as the discovery of fermentation itself. It appears in the oldest medical and household texts we have, from the Romans to the medieval apothecaries. It was the universal solvent of the common home because it was safe, it was cheap, and it was produced as a byproduct of keeping a farm. When I look at a jug of vinegar, I do not see a cleaning product. I see a link to a time when waste was a sin. The steel wool, of course, is a more modern arrival. But the principle behind it, the use of a controlled abrasive to remove unwanted scale, has been a cornerstone of domestic science for centuries. Before the mass production of fine-grade steel, our ancestors used equally effective, natural abrasives. Sifted wood ash, fine pumice stone, or even the crushed shells of mollusks. They understood the Mohs scale of hardness long before they had the language to name it. They knew instinctively that if you wanted to clean a pot or a pane of glass without scarring it, you had to choose an abrasive that was just strong enough to do the work, and no stronger. If you look at the household cyclopedias and the home economics bulletins published by agricultural colleges in the early 1900s, the ones meant to teach young brides how to run a sustainable home, you will find these exact techniques printed in black ink. They taught that the secret to a long-lasting home was not a well-stocked pantry of chemical sprays, but a deep understanding of the materials in your care. There is a lesson in the fact that these techniques have faded from common knowledge. It is not because they stopped working. The laws of chemistry and physics have not changed, and the minerals in our well water have not become any softer. These methods faded because they were not profitable to keep alive. In the middle of the last century, a great shift occurred in our society. We moved from a culture of stewardship, where the goal was to keep what you had for as long as possible, to a culture of consumption. We were taught to believe that time was better spent working to buy a new product than spending 10 minutes tending the one we already owned. The market decided that a consumer who buys a new shower door every 5 years is more valuable than a steward who cleans the same one for 50. So, the knowledge did not die. It just grew over, like a path in the woods that nobody walks anymore. I am here to help you clear that path again. And I want to be clear about why I show you these things. It is not because I want you to save a few pennies, though that is a blessing. It is because there is a profound, quiet dignity in being able to repair your own world. When you can take a clouded, ruined-looking piece of glass and restore it to perfect clarity with nothing more than vinegar and a handful of fine steel, you have changed your relationship with your environment. You are no longer a passive consumer waiting for the next plastic bottle to solve your problems. You are an active participant, a steward, a keeper of the home. That shift in perspective is the true miracle of these old methods. It is the realization that you have the power to fix, to clean, and to maintain the space you live in. It is a reclaiming of your own agency. And let me tell you, that feeling of standing in your clean bathroom, looking through glass that is perfectly, beautifully clear, glass that you restored yourself with your own 2 hands, that is a satisfaction that no store-bought spray can ever provide. It stays with you, and it gives you the confidence to look at the next problem, and the next, and ask, is this really broken, or does it just need a little tending? So, I invite you to try this. Do not take my word for it. Go to the cupboard, pull out the vinegar, find the right grade of steel wool, 4 zeros, remember, and put it to the test. If you have been living with a clouded door, a crusty faucet, or a kettle that looks like it has been through a war, pick one. Just one. Give it the soaking time it needs. Use the right pressure. Work with the grain of the surface. And when you see the transformation, when you see that stone and scum melt away to reveal the clear, shining surface beneath, I hope you will take a moment to stand there and appreciate the work. It is not just about a clean shower door. It is about the rhythm of the work, the quiet patience of the process, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing you have the skills to handle what life leaves behind. We have forgotten so much of what our grandfathers knew. But the good news is that none of it is gone forever. It is all waiting, right there in the simple things around us, just waiting for a hand to reach out and put it to work again. So, get the supplies, do the work, and then come back and let us talk about what else needs tending. We have a whole home to keep, and the path is open if you are willing to walk it.